Well, now we start with some title confusion. Basically, we're going to start with some title talk, and that is because apparently there is confusion within the WWE higher ups as to why they refer to Roman Reigns as the undisputed world champion. Still, if there is another world title now, and why apparently Asuka may also be considered a undisputed champion, even though Rhea Ripley holds the title on Raw. So it's a confusion. Like, I guess it's one of those cases of WWE hoping that people don't notice, but it's almost like they don't know what the word undisputed means. And the fact that undisputed actually means the best, number one, like, it means that there's no other champion in that category. Like, you're the best, you're undisputed. It's like when they did the undisputed title after Vengeance 2001, it wasn't, the undisputed champion and then another title. It was one champion. It was one champion. So if you wanted to make it where, I understand that you don't want to get rid of Roman's title reign, or, Roman has been the undisputed Universal Champion for most of his title reign, pretty much. So you don't want to change it right now, but the fact of the matter is, with Seth being in the picture and with Rhea Ripley being in the picture, there can't be an undisputed champion. There cannot be an undisputed world champion. There cannot be an undisputed world champion. And as far as current circumstances say, when Roman Reigns drops the world title, apparently the WWE Championships lineage will continue, which I hope there was absolutely no question about that, because the idea of WWE discontinuing the title history of the title that they've had since 1963 would be a big mistake and one of the worst things they could possibly do, because look at New Japan and how successful that was from their standpoint. That New Japan did exactly that, discontinuing the title they had since 1972. And everybody hated it. Nobody understood it. And long story short, it was a bit of a mistake for the company and one of the few missteps that New Japan has made. But the fact of the matter is, WWE doing it, it would be just as much of a mistake, because in my honest opinion, there is no reason to do it. Just discontinue the title history of the Universal title and continue the lineage of the title that everybody ties with WWE. When Roman drops the belt eventually. It is also possible that WWE is going to do away with the colored belt for Rhea Ripley as well, which means that Rhea will get a new championship tonight, and it will likely be similar to the title that Seth Rollins has. Because it's clearly what WWE is doing right now in title management, I guess is the best way to put it. Title management is the best way to put it, right? Speaking of title management, though, the unification match that has been apparently in the works for a long time at this point is set to take place on SmackDown, as the NXT World Tag Team Champions Alba Fire and Isla Dawn will collide with the WWE World Tag Team Champions in the women's division, Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. And apparently, the only reason why this match has not taken place sooner is because poorly timed and unfortunate injuries within the women's tag team division, including the ones to Dakota Kai and Liv Morgan, as both women have both women actually sustained injuries in the same matchup. According to the same report, the women's tag team titles are still set to be defended on NXT as well as the main roster, and it will not be where when the NXT when the titles are unified that the champions stay on the main roster and do not go to NXT. It will be where they go between the brands, which is what they should have done in the first place, as there were executives with it, there were people tied to NXT that wondered why they made the NXT Women's Tag Team titles in the first place at the time, and that they should have just kept it with the titles going between the brands instead of making one for NXT. Which I completely agree with, because I think having too many titles dilutes the titles. But again, that's just my old school opinion of everybody doesn't need a title, and you don't need multiple titles. The less titles makes the titles mean more, as opposed to having more titles making the titles mean less. In my opinion, and I think having one set of tag team titles will also help the tag team division, because you don't have to deal as much with the idea of depth within the tag team division if you only have one set of tag team titles as opposed to two. And speaking of depth, and speaking of champions adding prestige back to their championship, or adding prestige to their championships, Gunther has surpassed a full calendar year as Intercontinental Champion, and is set to hold the title for with no end in sight. He is set to keep the title with no end in sight. Is the Ring General. He will be the champion for the foreseeable future, and with the fact that he is set to pass, or has passed in the last coming weeks, Dolph Ziggler and Jeff Hardy as Intercontinental Champion. And right now at this point, the total reign for the longest reign for the Intercontinental Championship is 454 days. And right now Gunther is at 367, so he is just under. He's just over a year. He just passed Jeff Hardy earlier this week, and he will be passing Dolph Ziggler within the next week or so. And then the next couple of reigns are Shinsuke Nakamura and Wade Barrett, or the next closest reigns are Shinsuke Nakamura and Wade Barrett, as Gunther is approaching the top 10 for the longest reigns as Intercontinental Champion. And also, if he does in fact pass the Honky Tonk Man, he will put himself in as number 4 all time as the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. And if you want to know, Gunther's title reign will happen if Gunther does set the full year. If Gunther does set the new record, then Gunther will be the longest. Gunther will be. What was I gonna say? If Gunther does set the new title reign, he will be number 4 all time. If Gunther does set the title reign, he'll get it in September. So we have a couple months left before before we get in the final run through of if Gunther is going to pass the Honky Tonk Man. Also, I just want to say now that apparently NXT will have a lot of changes, and WWE is doing everything in their power to try and boost up NXT because of the upcoming media rights deal negotiations. So we could be seeing a lot more changes and a lot more updates to NXT over the next couple of weeks, and this is the reason why Seth Rollins, Mustafa Ali, and Baron Corbin have been coming down to NXT, and the reason why WWE made the free agent the free agent slot in the brand split to allow for talent to go down to NXT and help boost the ratings, which I do believe I spoke about in a recent news video, saying that that is actually going to happen. I mean, that is actually happening, where the infusion of the main roster on NXT is actually helping with the ratings of NXT. And you know, with the potential world title defense for Seth Rollins against Braun Breaker, that should be a big number for NXT on television if that does in fact happen in the not too distant future. But with that being said, we got another news video to get to, and I will see you in the next one.